Hi, I'm Andy Burrows from PCT TV, and I'm here today with Dr. Raphaela Schnurbus, who's Clinical Solutions Director at OPIS. Welcome, thank you. First of all, could you tell me a little bit about what OPIS does and your role, please?
Yeah, OPIS is a clinical CRO with 10 locations all over Europe. I'm heading the Clinical Solutions and BD group in OPIS. And my role is a transversal role, so I'm coordinating the business of the 10 business units of OPIS Group. Actually, my history is that I'm coming from pharmaceutical sciences. I worked in basic research, I worked in preclinical, service provider, and a few years ago I ended up in clinical research. So I think I have a good overview of the whole drug development process. So my role in OPIS is to bring the clinical solutions to our business units and to bring the business and clinical solutions to our sponsors, so to be their partner.
So technology is obviously a big topic at the moment. Which technologies do you think will have the biggest impact on clinical trials?
Yeah, it's true. We are all speaking about new technologies, not only in clinical research. The big challenge in this moment is to manage all the analytical and artificial intelligence. So we need technologies to support this part, to be able to manage all the big data that is coming out from clinical trials. So I'm thinking what is really needed in clinical trials. We know that the process is long, the process is complex. We start with activities for planning, predicting clinical trials. We are speaking about medical writing, methodologies of trials, conduct of the clinical part, to manage all what is coming out of it, to manage the data and to manage the statistical analysis that is coming up. So we need a technology that can combine and can have to be one source. So we are speaking about EDC platforms, so electronic data capture. Many companies have their own platforms. Many service providers offer their own platforms. And the aim is to keep all in one source. And the real challenge here, because we already know to do this, the real challenge here is to combine different technologies, to combine technologies from other data, so from other stakeholders of the trials. So I'm thinking about central labs, I'm thinking about drug supply, so all the stakeholders that are part of the clinical trial, and to collect and to combine them all in one source. And I think the important point is to have the compatibility, so that the systems and the technologies can speak with each other, so to have all in one source. We have a lot of help on the market. There is a lot of support. We all know that the trial is succeeding or is failing due to recruitment.
Sure.
So we have platforms that help to manage recruitment, that help to retain patients, to engage patients. We all know that on mobile devices, on tablets or via apps, we can do the patient diaries, electronic diaries, e-pros. This is very important. We already speak about electronic informed consent. Here is still a big challenge. So the first electronic informed consent were performed, but some of them failed. Why?
Yeah.
Because the ethics committees were not aligned or were not ready to manage this. So I think the big challenge here is not only to have the technologies available and to combine them and to have them in one source, but the various stakeholders of the trial needs to be prepared. And I think here is still some space for improvement.
Yeah, lots there. And so, I mean, you've kind of touched on lots of different areas there. What do you think are the biggest changes that we'll see in clinical research in the next 5 years, say?
Yeah, the change here is apart from what I mentioned before, for sure, and linked to the management of big data, of all also personal data, all the data processing that needs to be guided and protected, that is moving from one source to another, from one stakeholder to the other. So we need to have the data protection not only on local level, but on international level, European level, non-European level, global level, and still each part or each geographic area has its own guidelines and rules. So there will be a new regulation next year in spring, and here there is a huge movement to get aligned with these new regulations and to have all the stakeholders in place and harmonized. So I think data processing, data protection, privacy is a big question. And this is a question not only for lawyers, but as I mentioned before, for all the stakeholders, for authorities, for ethics committees, for the pharma companies, biotech companies, for the service providers. So all are involved and touched by this. In our company, we list some situations, very challenging situations, where we need to protect data from European countries and non-European countries. We know that there's a globalization of trials. They get more and more global, or already sometimes in early phases, and this is really a big challenge.
Yes.
As I mentioned, the trials get more and more global, the trials get more and more complex, and that means that costs are rising. Some companies are aware about this. Companies try to minimize this and obviously to save money. So to be more and more aligned and streamlining all the processes means also to have more efficiency and to save money. And at the end, this is interesting for the companies. Risk-sharing models in this context are more and more interesting. So risk-sharing models from sponsor companies, service providers are more and more applying risk-sharing models. There is a huge variety how to manage this. So with crowdfunding, with fusion, we see that a lot of companies, mainly big companies, there are a lot of fusion processes. So also service providers get more and more bigger, and they cover more and more service areas. The niche companies need to partner, so this is also globalizing, and this is always in the context what I mentioned before. Okay, globalizing and protect yourself. Protect yourself for data, from a legal point of view, but also for the patients. So we are speaking about patients, we are speaking about sensible data of the patients, we are speaking about protecting the patients, the safety of the patients. So all this is aligned with this in this context.
Okay, so kind of a lot of exciting but challenging times coming up. If there's one thing you could change about the clinical trials industry as it is at the moment, what would it be? There's
a big challenge, and there's still a huge gap between science and ethical questions. And I think all this movement should go more and more in the direction to minimize this gap and to avoid it or to try to overcome this. So for sure there will be always challenges that needs to be overcome in 5 years, 10 years, and also beyond. But I think a real challenge and a real change needs to be addressed to the point of gap between science and ethics.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome, thank you.